If money made you powerful, you wouldn't need to shout, the waitress said quietly. Her voice sliced through the golden silence like glass, breaking under pressure. The billionaire's hand froze mid-air, his diamond cufflinks glinting under the chandeliers. For a heartbeat, even the pianist forgot to breathe. Around them, the wealthy elite watched servants and kings trading places without a crown. He had come to humiliate her. Instead, she had unmasked him. The power in the room shifted, invisible but absolute. And as his empire of arrogance trembled, everyone realized truth had just spoken back to money. In that moment, Liv would forever change. Sophia Jenkins had never been the type to seek out drama. She was 28, juggling 2 jobs, a mountain of student loan debt, and a spirited 7-year-old daughter named Kiki, who constantly begged for dance lessons. But this was life in New York City. When Sophia was offered a part-time position at Lipon, a Michelin-starred establishment perched in the heart of Manhattan, she leaped at the chance. The tips alone could keep her afloat in a city where money flowed in torrents but rarely settled among the working class. Nestled on the upper floor of an elegant pre-war building, Lipon was known for its French-Asian fusion menu and an unspoken dress code that turned away even the slightest breach of formality. The staff wore crisp black and white uniforms with embroidered lapels, and each employee was trained to an impeccable standard. Head chef Corinne Leme-Maire had once worked under a renowned chef in Paris, and rumor had it that celebrities like Beyoncé and even Bill Gates had stopped in for discreet meals. The pressure that came with such clientele was extraordinary, yet Sophia believed the job was worth it. The pay was decent, the tips potentially life-changing, and the environment polished. As a single mother with unstoppable determination, she braced herself for the challenge. Each day, Sophia arrived 2 hours before her shift to help set up, meticulously aligning silverware, wiping down wine glasses until they shone like diamonds under the chandeliers, and memorizing every nuance of the day's menu. She learned that if the chef de cuisine was in a sour mood, the staff had to be 2 steps ahead of any requests. If the sommelier had a special recommendation, they had to be ready to describe it flawlessly. Everything mattered. How you walked, how you held a plate, how you spoke to each diner. She was exhausted, but oddly satisfied at the end of every shift. Something about delivering a perfect service invigorated her. She likened it to a dance routine. Every step and gesture, choreographed every phrase of speech, practiced every smile, genuine yet carefully measured. Within weeks, Sophia found her stride. She charmed couples celebrating anniversaries, corporate groups toasting deals, and wealthy out-of-towners wanting a taste of luxury. She was thrilled when her first big tip arrived, a neat $200 from a hedge fund manager who appreciated her knowledge of vintage border. That tip went straight into Kiki's Dance Dreams piggy bank. Outside of the restaurant, Sophia's world was decidedly more modest. Her tiny Queens apartment was a cozy 1-bedroom where Kiki slept in a corner, partitioned off by a lavender curtain. The living room doubled as the dining space, and the kitchen was barely big enough to spin around in. Yet they made the most of it, filling each corner with drawings of princesses and pictures of exotic places they planned to visit one day. Despite the challenges, Sophia was determined to provide her daughter with a life that stretched beyond meager paychecks and cramped quarters. This new job at Lipon felt like a step in the right direction. So when she clocked in that fateful Saturday evening, she had no idea that her life was about to change. It was a busy night, reservations fully booked with what the maître described as influential figures. This usually meant CEOs, high-profile attorneys, or maybe even a celebrity under a baseball cap. The entire staff was on high alert as rumors were swirling that a notable billionaire might make an appearance. Chef Lame-Maire fretted in the kitchen, triple-checking fresh ingredients flown in from across the globe. The sous chefs prepped dishes with a precision that bordered on surgical. That was the night Ethan Caldwell strode through the doors of Lipon, known in the media as a reclusive billionaire who rarely granted interviews. Ethan had amassed his fortune in technology, specifically advanced predictive software that governments and corporations coveted. He held the patent for a groundbreaking algorithm used in everything from stock market analysis to facial recognition. Tabloids had a field day whenever he was spotted reporting on everything from his choice of suits to the mysterious women occasionally seen at his side. Some called him the next Jeff Bezos, others the new Steve Jobs. Many described him as brilliant yet ruthless, a man who allegedly valued his time and money above human decency, but to the staff of Le Papon, he was simply table 9 tonight, and that was all that should matter, at least according to the restaurant's code of conduct. Sophia, having studied the seating chart, knew he was the last-minute VIP addition, the kind who might drop 4 figures on a bottle of wine without blinking. She wasn't assigned to serve table 9 at first, but fate has a funny way of intervening. Chapter 2. A tense encounter, approx 800 words. The restaurant buzzed like a hive on the brink of chaos. Waiters circled the dining floor like choreographed dancers, swift, silent, and efficient. Every seat was filled. The clink of glasses, the rustle of napkins, and the quiet hum of polite conversation intermingled with the subdued notes of live piano music. Sophia's section for the night was originally tables hive 6 and 7, none of them especially important. Table 5 was a couple celebrating their 20th wedding anniversary. Tables was occupied by a solitary diner who was more interested in reading his thick biography of Winston Churchill than in socializing. Table 7 was a small group of art dealers politely discussing an upcoming auction. Sophia had just successfully delivered a muse-bouche, a trio of delicate canapes to each table without incident. So far, so good. Then came the surprise. Julian, the waiter assigned to table 9, slipped in the kitchen. It happened so fast he was carrying a tray of champagne flutes, headed for the VIP section, when a stray garnish of microgreens fell to the floor, causing him to lose his footing. Julian tumbled flutes and champagne, crashing in a spectacular sparkling arc. He twisted his ankle badly. The maitre rushed in anxious and pale, while Chef Lemaire let out an audible gasp from behind the pass. In that frantic moment, the maitre scanned the restaurant for a suitable replacement. Another server had just started her break. Another was bogged down with a 12 top in the opposite corner. His gaze landed on Sophia. "Sophia," he said quickly. "You're up." She blinked, heart pounding. She was nervous, but the unspoken rule at Leapin was unyielding. You never question an order, especially in front of guests. She nodded curtly, found an open tray, and prepared herself to serve Ethan Caldwell, reclusive billionaire rumored to be as demanding as he was powerful. Taking a deep breath, she approached table 9. Ethan Caldwell was no older than 45, tall and broad-shouldered with neatly styled salt and pepper hair. He wore a custom-tailored navy suit with a subtle pinstripe that probably cost more than a year of Sophia's rent. His wrist sported a watch that gleamed with understated opulence, something Swiss, no doubt. Next to him sat a business associate, slighter in build, equally well-dressed, whose name Sophia would later learn was Aaron Welsh. Surrounding them were 2 bodyguards seated at separate tables, attempting to be inconspicuous, but failing miserably given their matching black suits and earpieces. Sophia approached, posture aligned, eyes calm, a faint smile etched on her lips. "Good evening," she said, voice steady. "Welcome to Le Papon. My name is Sophia, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. May I start you with our signature cocktails, or would you prefer to see the wine list?" Ethan glanced at her, barely acknowledging her presence. She could see the flicker of annoyance in his steel gray eyes, presumably due to the minor commotion with the champagne fiasco. Aaron Welsh offered a polite smile, but Ethan said nothing. "Wine list?" he muttered. "Make it quick, and if you have a good vintage of Riesling, bring that." He didn't look up from his phone fingers flying across the screen. Sophia nodded and hurried to fetch the wine list, ignoring the knot forming in her stomach. She reminded herself that as a server, her job was to remain calm, professional, and gracious, no matter who sat at the table. This was the unwritten credo she and her colleagues lived by daily: be invisible when needed, be supportive when invited, and always maintain composure. She took a mental note to check the cellar for the recommended reasoning that Chef Lame Mare had raved about. Perhaps it might please him and brighten his mood. Returning to table 9, she carefully offered the list. "We have an excellent reeling from the Mosul Valley," she suggested in her best polite tone. "It's a 2001 vintage, quite rare, with notes of peach apricot and a mineral finish. Head chef Corin Lair speaks highly of it. I think it would pair beautifully with tonight's specials." Ethan paused, then tossed the wine list aside as if it were a distraction. He hadn't once made direct eye contact yet. "Fine, bring it," he snapped. "But let's not waste time with the cheap stuff I can pay for quality." Sophia nodded, forced a mild smile, and stepped away. In the brief moment she spent fetching the bottle and retrieving the correct glassware, she felt a pang of anxiety. There was nothing unusual about demanding guests, some even borderline hostile, but there was an aura around Ethan Caldwell, an electricity in the air that made her uneasy. Perhaps it was his wealth or the swirl of rumors about his intimidating personality, or maybe just the fact that she was new to serving high-profile clients at Leapin. Either way, she knew one misstep could lead to a nightmarish shift. She meticulously carried out the bottle presentation, showing Ethan the label. He waved it off impatiently, allowing her to pour a small sample. He took a sip, pursed his lips, and nodded curtly. So far, so good. When she attempted to describe the evening's specials, though, he cut her off mid-sentence. "Stop wasting my time with pleasantries," he said sharply. "Can we just order? I have a meeting in 20 minutes. Bring me the Wagyu beef seared rare black garlic sauce on the side, no garnish, and a side of truffle mashed potatoes. Make it happen quickly." Her heart quickened. Leapin prided itself on elegant plating, all meticulously arranged with garnishes and accompaniment. But she had no choice. "Of course, sir," she said, keeping her face neutral. Turning to Aaron Welsh, she politely inquired what he'd like to order. He looked deeply uncomfortable, as though he disliked the tension, but was used to following Ethan's lead. He ordered a bouillabaisse and politely thanked her. As Sophia disappeared into the kitchen to place their orders, she felt the tension throbbing in her chest. Other staff members whispered about the scene at table 9. Chef Lame Mare was particularly anxious personally tending to Ethan Caldwell's meal, wanting to ensure that if this pummed billionaire ever decided to invest in a new gastronomic venture, Lipong would be the first on his list. Unbeknownst to her, the real drama was only just beginning. While Ethan Caldwell sipped his prized Riesling, the rest of Leapin's dining room remained a swirl of refined activity. Waiters delicately balanced silver-domed trays. The pianist's melodic tunes floated on the air, and well-heeled patrons murmured amongst themselves. Yet there was an undercurrent of tension creeping outward from table 9 like ripples on a pond. Sophia was busy checking on her other tables. She refilled a glass of champagne for the anniversary. Couple answered a question about source pairings for the art dealers and politely asked the solo diner if he'd like dessert. Despite juggling multiple requests, she couldn't escape the looming sense of dread. She knew she would have to return to Ethan Caldwell's table soon, and her stomach twisted at the thought. When Chef Lame Mare rang the bell indicating the table, 9's dishes were ready. Sophia quickly gathered the plates with practiced efficiency. The Wagyu beef glistened, expertly seared with the black garlic sauce in a small ramekin on the side. The truffle mashed potatoes were piped elegantly, though the garnish had been omitted as requested. Chef Lame Mare had not been pleased, but Ethan's demands were absolute. Beside that sat the bill fragrant with saffron tomatoes and delicate pieces of shellfish. Sophia emerged from the kitchen and made her way through the tables, head held high. As she arrived at table 9, she gently placed the Wagyu before Ethan, then set down the bilt in front of Aaron Welsh. "I hope you enjoy your meal," she said softly, stepping back to maintain the polite distance required. For a few minutes, Ethan picked up his cutlery and began to eat, ignoring Sophia entirely. She half expected him to bark some complaint about temperature or presentation, but to her surprise, he seemed too absorbed in his own thoughts to speak. Instead, she watched Aaron's discreet nod, acknowledging the quality of the boya, and felt slightly relieved. But just when she thought she might skate through the service unscathed, Ethan's face hardened. He set down his fork, leaned back in his chair, and pushed the plate away in an abrupt gesture. "Waitress," he barked, looking directly at Sophia for the first time. Her heart lurched at his commanding tone, but she approached, maintaining a calm demeanor. "Yes, sir," she answered. Trying not to let her apprehension show, Ethan gestured to the steak, his expression stormy. "This is raw," he snarled. "I asked for rare, not raw. Are you trying to give me food poisoning or something?" Sophia swallowed hard. She knew for a fact that Chef Lamaire's cooking was impeccable. The internal temperature of that Wagyu would have been precisely what Ethan had asked for, but a server never argues in front of a guest. "I'm sorry to hear that, sir," she said, voice measured. "I can have it taken back to the kitchen and cooked further to your liking." He let out a mirthless laugh, loud enough to turn a few heads at nearby tables. "Cooked further, I shouldn't have to repeat myself. This place is supposed to be top tier. You should know how to serve a steak properly." Sophia breathed in and out steady. She reminded herself of little Kiki back home, of the rent that needed paying, of the tips she relied on. "I understand," she said softly. "Let me fix this for you immediately, Chef Lame." "Mirwell, I don't want excuses," Ethan snapped. "I want solutions now, and while you're at it, bring another bottle of that Riesling and hurry." Aaron Welsh glanced at Sophia apologetically, but he said nothing. The tension in the dining area thickened. Nearby patrons shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to keep watching or pretend they hadn't noticed. Sophia felt her cheeks flush, but kept her posture poised. "Yes, sir," she said, lifting the plate and turning to leave. Only then did the billionaire raise his voice to address the rest of the restaurant. "For a place like this, to mess up a simple steak is ridiculous. Do you realize how much money is spent to dine here? You'd think they'd hire competent staff." A hush fell among the diners as Ethan's outburst reverberated against the elegantly paneled walls. Murmurs rose among the crowd. Aaron placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, trying to calm him, but Ethan shrugged him off. Sophia's ears burned. It was one thing to be berated quietly, but quite another to be humiliated publicly. Her composure slipped for a moment, a flash of hurt crossing her face. However, years of hardship had taught her to remain calm under provocation. She disappeared into the kitchen, asked Chef Lamaitre to cook the steak just a tad longer, and retrieved another bottle of Riesling. The chef was furious at Ethan's accusation of rawness and questioned if the man even understood what rare meant. Still, their hands were tied. The customer was always right, especially a billionaire who could make or break reputations. Sophia returned with the updated Wagyu and the new bottle, carefully displaying it for Ethan's approval. He gave no sign of courtesy, merely lifting his glass for a refill as she poured. Tension lines creased his forehead, and his voice dripped with disdain. She set the steak in front of him. "I hope this is to your satisfaction," she said, biting back any edge in her tone. He glowered at her but cut into the meat. He took a bite, then nodded curtly. Finally, he muttered. Then he added, "You should have done it right the first time." His voice echoed. A few patrons stared openly now, while others pretended to be absorbed in their meals. The pianist continued playing more softly, more hesitantly. Trying in vain to maintain the ambiance, Ethan's eyes flicked up at Sophia. "Well, what are you waiting for?" "You can go." She inclined her head and stepped away, feeling her pulse racing. Before she could take more than 3 steps, he barked again. "Waitress!" She froze, turning slowly. His phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, reading a text, and then glared at Sophia as though she had personally offended him. "Get me the check now," he ordered. "And get your manager over here." Sophia's stomach sank. This couldn't be good. She hurried to the maitre, who immediately tensed at the request. Managers rarely appeared tableside unless there was a major issue, and for a VIP like Ethan Caldwell, damage control had to be swift and thorough. The maitre smoothed his jacket and joined Sophia approaching table 9 with careful diplomacy. Ethan wasted no time in ranting about how incompetent the service was, how his steak was subpar, and how his time was wasted. The maitre tried to pate him, apologizing profusely and promising to remove the Wagyu from the bill. It was then that the dreaded moment happened. Ethan turned to Sophia, face twisted with scorn, and unleashed an insult-laden tirade that rose above the gentle hum of the dining room. "This waitress is clueless," he fumed. "She can't follow simple instructions. She wasted my evening, brought me raw meat, and I'm paying top dollar. Unacceptable. I don't care if she's new or incompetent. People like her shouldn't be allowed in places like this. I've run companies with thousands of employees, and if any one of them performed like she did tonight, I'd have them fired on the spot." The whole restaurant fell silent. A hush blanketed the dining room, as though someone had hit a pause button on life itself. Every pair of eyes fixed on Ethan Caldwell, stunned by the ferocity of his outburst. The chatter of the other tables died away. Forks and knives clattered to a standstill, and even the pianist's fingers froze on the keys. Aaron Welsh was red-faced, staring down at his half-eaten billet, clearly, wishing he could melt into the floor. Sophia stood, rigid heart pounding in her ears. Her cheeks burned with both humiliation and anger. She struggled to keep in check. The entire staff watched as this towering man verbally pummeled her, telling the world she was worthless, incompetent, a nobody. Something inside Sophia cracked. She had spent years turning the other cheek, dealing with condescending customers who snapped their fingers, students in her second job as a dance instructor complaining about fees, even the father of her child who vanished without a trace, leaving her alone to raise Kiki. She had always bottled up her frustrations, swallowing every harsh word and insult, convinced that meek acceptance was the only way to survive. But in this moment, with the entire restaurant gawking at her humiliation, her backbone finally straightened. She lifted her chin, looked Ethan Caldwell square in the eye for the first time that night, and spoke a single sentence that stopped all of Manhattan in its tracks. Or so it felt. "You can buy a steak, sir, but you can't buy decency." Her voice was calm, but the words cut through the air like a knife. For a moment, it seemed as though time itself had halted. The words lingered echoing in the silent dining room. Every person within earshot felt the impact of her statement. A wave of shock rippled through the crowd. Even the maitre was stunned into momentary silence. Chef Laame Mayer, peeking from the kitchen, felt her heart jolt with pride and dread. All at once, Ethan Caldwell's expression froze. His eyes widened in anger and a flush crept up his neck. No one spoke to him like this, especially not a waitress. After a stunned beat, he began to splutter. "What did you just say?" Sophia's composure held. Her posture was as straight as an arrow. Her gaze unflinching, I said, "You can buy a steak, but you can't buy decency." She repeated, her voice echoing the calm resolve of someone who had finally had enough. She expected an immediate explosion from him, but instead, the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his reaction. People slowly emerged from their stunned silence. A few tables began clapping tentatively at first. Then one or two bolder voices joined in until a soft applause spread across the room like a gentle wave. It was a subtle but tangible show of solidarity with the courageous waitress who had dared to speak her truth. Ethan's face contorted with rage. He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. The half-eaten steak before him lay forgotten. "How dare you?" he roared. "Do you have any idea who I am? I could buy this entire restaurant and fire you all. I could ruin your life with a single phone call." Sophia swallowed her pulse, drumming, but she refused to back down. She was no fool. She knew the risk she had taken by speaking out. She might lose her job, the only stable income she had, but in that moment, her self-respect outweighed her fear. "I'm well aware of who you are." "Mr. Caldwell," she said quietly, her voice wavering only slightly, "I also know that doesn't give you the right to treat people like they're disposable." The applause grew louder. A few guests rose to their feet, nodding in agreement. A whirlwind of confusion seized the maître. On one hand, he needed to protect the restaurant's reputation from a furious billionaire. On the other, the moral compass of every person in that room had been rattled by Ethan's vicious behavior. The staff exchanged worried glances, uncertain of how to intervene. Ethan Caldwell's breathing was heavy. He jerked his gaze from Sophia to the maître to the onlookers around him, all of whom were either silently watching or openly showing support for the waitress. It was a surreal moment, a standoff between an exceedingly wealthy man and a courageous woman who'd had enough of being trampled upon. "Your manager, Ethan," hissed, turning to the maître. Now the maître stepped forward, hands held out in a conciliatory gesture. "Mr. Caldwell, please accept our apologies for any—" Ethan silenced him with a raised hand. "I'm done," he said, his voice seething with anger. "I won't spend another minute here. This is unacceptable. Do you realize what a public relations nightmare this is for me? I'll see to it that this establishment suffers. And you," he snarled at Sophia, "you just made the biggest mistake of your life without waiting for the check." He tossed a wad of cash onto the table, far exceeding the bill, apparently, and grabbed his phone. Aaron Welsh quickly scrambled after him, whispering apologies to the stunned staff. The two bodyguards who had stood abruptly when Ethan shouted followed their employer out the door, leaving the entire restaurant in a hushed state of disbelief. Sophia stood rooted to the spot, her entire body shaking from the adrenaline rush. Had she really just done that? The weight of her words hit her, and she wondered if she had gone too far. She might have lost her job. The cost of that rebellious sentence might spell financial disaster. But deep down, an ember of pride glowed in her chest. She'd spoken truth. To power, even if it would cost her everything. Chapter 5. After the storm approx 800 words. The echo of Ethan Caldwell's threats lingered in the dining room long after he stormed out. People began to whisper to one another, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others stealing glances at Sophia, who remained standing near table 9. The cash scattered across the table like unwanted confetti. It was only then that she realized her eyes were brimming with tears. The stress, the fear, and the triumph of that single moment overwhelmed her. Before she could wipe her eyes, the maître stepped forward, followed closely by Chef Lame Mare, who had emerged from the kitchen. "Sophia," he said gently, pressing a hand to her shoulder. "Are you okay?" She swallowed hard and nodded, blinking away the tears. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I don't know what came over me." Chef Lame Mare spoke up, her voice tinged with both concern and admiration. "What came over you was the courage to stand up to a bully, chérie. I'm proud of you for speaking your truth, but we have to be prepared for the consequences." Sophia's heart sank. "I understand if you need to let me go," she murmured. "I spoke out of turn. I was unprofessional." "Let's not make any rash decisions," the maître interjected. "You did what you felt was right. If Mr. Caldwell makes good on his threats, we'll have to deal with it then. But for now, take a few minutes to collect yourself." One of the buses stepped up to clear the table, but the maître raised his hand. "No," he said, eyeing the pile of cash Ethan had flung down. "We'll handle that carefully. The check was never finalized. This is complicated." Sophia, too shaken to deal with the financial logistics of the situation, nodded. I'll step outside for a moment." She made her way to the back exit, escaping into the alley where the restaurant disposed of its trash. Under the soft glow of a single street lamp, she leaned against the cold brick wall and inhaled the crisp night air. Her mind whirled with 100 questions. How would she pay her bills if she lost this job? What about Kiki's dance lessons? Had she just shattered her future with one impulsive sentence? Yet amidst the swirl of fear, she felt an undeniable relief. For once, she hadn't just swallowed her dignity. She'd stood up for herself and by proxy, for every server, cashier, receptionist, or sales clerk who had ever been dehumanized by someone wielding wealth as a weapon. She was startled by a gentle voice. Sophia turning, she found one of her co-workers, a fellow waitress named Martyr, hovering in the doorway. Martyr, a kind soul in her early 40s, had been at Le Papillon for years. She offered Sophia a comforting smile. "Some of the customers asked for you," Martyr said softly. "They wanted to thank you for what you did." "Thank me?" Sophia asked, surprised. "But I probably just ruined the restaurant's reputation and my own." Martyr shrugged. "You said what everyone was thinking. The way he treated you was awful. He was acting like he owned the world. A lot of us have been there, dealing with entitled customers. It's refreshing to see someone push back." Sophia exhaled, shaky but somewhat reassured. She gave a small nod. "I'll be back in, but I need a minute." "Can you let the maître know, of course," Marta said with a supportive smile. Then she ducked back inside, leaving Sophia to gather her thoughts in solitude. As she stood there in the crisp air, she thought of Kiki. Her daughter had always looked up to her, proud that her mother was a dancer and a hard-working waitress. Sophia tried to imagine explaining her actions to Kiki. Could she say, "Mommy lost her job because she wouldn't let a mean man talk down to her"? A tear slipped down her cheek, and she brushed it away, steeling herself. If she had to start over, she would. But at least she had looked that bully in the eye and refused to let him trample her spirit. Eventually, she returned to the dining room. Though she felt drained and hollow, she put on a professional face to finish her shift. She apologized to the anniversary couple for the disturbance, but they were gracious, telling her she was an inspiration for standing up for herself. The art dealers expressed similar sentiments. Even the solitary diner paused his reading long enough to slip her an extra tip. Word had obviously spread about what had happened. "I'm proud of you," one older woman whispered, gripping Sophia's hand as she left. "We need more women who speak their minds." Yet for every supportive gesture, there was an undercurrent of tension among the staff. Everyone wondered how the owners would react when they heard about the scene. Would they side with the young waitress who risked the restaurant's good graces with an influential billionaire, or would they do damage control at her expense by the end of the night as the last table was cleared and the doors were locked? Sophia felt emotionally spent. She dragged herself into the staff locker room to change, half expecting the maître to appear and hand her a pink slip, but he never came. Instead, the only person who entered was Chef Lame Mercit Cherie. She said, gesturing to the small bench against the wall, "I wanted to speak with you before you went home." Sophia sank onto the bench, her stomach churning with anxiety. Chef Lame Mere sat beside her, a sympathetic expression softening her usually stern features. "Sophia," she began, "you made quite the impression tonight. Many of our regulars are already telling me how deeply they respect you, and I do too." A lump formed in Sophia's throat. "Thank you. That means a lot. But what about Ethan Caldwell? His threats weren't empty. He's one of the wealthiest men in the city. He could ruin Le Papillon's reputation, or sue us," or Chef Lame meroded gravely. "We'll see what happens. For now, management hasn't asked for your resignation, and as far as I know, they're not planning to." In fact, the maître hinted that the owners might want to take a different approach. "There's a lot of support for you, more than you might realize. I suggest you go home. Rest and wait to hear from them tomorrow." Relief washed over Sophia, though she couldn't fully relax. "Thank you, Chef," she whispered, tears brimming again. The older woman patted her hand. "Go home, hug your daughter. Tomorrow's another day and we'll face it together if need be." Sophia nodded, packed up her things, and left the restaurant. She hopped on the subway back to Queens, her mind still spinning. As she looked out at the flickering tunnel lights, she couldn't help but think about the consequences of her actions. Tomorrow would bring either hope or doom, or maybe both. But for now, she clung to a small sense of victory. She had no idea her words would soon become a viral sensation. When Sophia woke up the next morning, her phone was vibrating incessantly on her bedside table. She groaned, glancing at the clock. 6:30 a.m., an ungodly hour for a Sunday. Sliding her finger across the screen, she saw a barrage of text messages, missed calls, and notifications from social media apps she rarely even opened. Her pulse jumped. What on earth was happening? She unlocked her phone to find a flood of messages, some from co-workers at Le Papin, others from friends she hadn't spoken to in years, and even from unknown numbers. Words jumped out at her. OMG, you're trending. Are you okay? That was so brave. Call me ASAP. Her heart hammered as she scrolled through social media. She was tagged in multiple posts. One particular video shaky footage from a patron's phone showed Ethan Caldwell berating her in the restaurant, then captured the pivotal moment when she uttered the sentence that left the room stunned. "You can buy a steak, sir, but you can't buy decency." The clip ended with Ethan's outraged departure, followed by the applause that spread through the dining room. Already the video had hundreds of thousands of views on Twitter and Instagram, with comments pouring in at breakneck speed. Finally, someone stood up to that jerk Billionaire. Go Waitress respect. I want to find her and give her a medal. Ethan Caldwell is a known tyrant. Good for her. There were detractors, too, who insisted Sophia was out of line, that a server should never speak to a patron like that, especially someone who could ruin their life. But the majority seemed overwhelmingly supportive. Hashtags like hashed. You can't buy. Decency trended throughout the morning. Sophia felt dizzy with anxiety. She had never asked for this kind of attention. What if the owners of Leapin saw it and decided she was a liability? What if Ethan Caldwell launched a defamation lawsuit? She was just a single mom trying to make ends meet, not a freedom fighter ready to battle a tech titan. Still in her pajamas, she paced the narrow living room while Kiki, still half asleep, wandered out of her makeshift bedroom. Rubbing her eyes, her daughter asked Mommy, "Why are you up so early?" Sophia plastered on a smile. "Don't worry about it, sweet pea," she said, kissing her on the forehead. "How about I make us some pancakes before we do anything else today?" Kiki's eyes lit up. "Yes, please, with chocolate chips." "Of course," Sophia said softly. While she whisked the batter, her phone continued buzzing on the countertop. She received a call from Martyr, who sounded breathless. "You have no idea what's going on?" Martyr exclaimed. "The owners just called an emergency meeting with the entire staff for noon today. Rumor has it reporters are calling the restaurant non-stop trying to get your name. It's crazy." Sophia's stomach sank. "Do you think they'll fire me?" Martyr hesitated. "I don't know, but I do know we're all rooting for you. Customers have been calling too, praising what you did. Hang in there." Sophia thanked her and set the phone aside, focusing on flipping pancakes as if her life depended on it. After breakfast, she dressed Kiki and brought her to her friend Lydia's place, who often watched Kiki when Sophia had short-notice obligations. She confided in Lydia about the situation, and Lydia, always the optimist, reassured her that everything would work out. It was with trembling hands and a racing heart that Sophia arrived at Leapong just before noon. A small throng of reporters and cameramen hovered outside the entrance, brandishing microphones and cameras. She recognized the logos of local news stations, and her chest tightened with dread. How had this spiraled so quickly? One of the reporters spotted her. Miss, is it true? You're the waitress who stood up to Ethan Caldwell. Can you tell us what happened?" Sophia lowered her gaze and attempted to slip past them. She didn't want to make any statement that could worsen her situation. The maître was at the door, ushering her in quickly. "Good to see you," he murmured. "Just head to the private dining room in the back. The meeting's about to start inside." Every member of the staff was already seated. Bartenders, servers, chefs, buses, and hosts. The tension was palpable. At the head of the room, stood Franco Moretti, the restaurant's general manager, and Patrice Fontaine, the majority owner of Lipon. Sophia had only seen Patrice once before, during a special event. Patrice was a tall, elegant woman in her mid-50s, with silver hair twisted into a sleek shiny. Her posture exuded confidence, and her cool blue eyes commanded the room's attention. When Sophia entered, heads turned and she felt a flush creep up her neck. She quietly slipped into a seat near the back. Franco cleared his throat and began. Thank you all for coming in on short notice. As you're all probably aware by now, a video involving an incident at our restaurant last night has gone viral. While this has put our establishment under sudden media scrutiny, we need to address this situation professionally and collaboratively. He glanced at Patrice, who stepped forward. Liapong has always prided itself on excellence, she said, her voice clear, not just in our cuisine but also in our service. However, we also believe in treating our staff with dignity. We do not condone the mistreatment of our employees by anyone regardless of wealth or influence. A low murmur rippled through the staff. Sophia's heart fluttered at Patrice's statement. Was it possible that the restaurant's management actually stood behind her? Patrice's gaze scanned the room until it found Sophia Jenkins. She said, "Please come forward." A hush fell. Sophia's stomach knotted as she rose from her chair and walked toward the front of the room, aware that every eye followed her. Sophia, Patrice began, "I've been informed of the details surrounding last night's event. We've all seen the footage that's been circulating, while we do not usually encourage public confrontations with guests. Your response to Mr. Caldwell's verbal abuse has sparked a much-needed conversation about the respect and value of service workers as the owner of Lipon. I believe it is crucial to stand by my staff when they have been attacked unjustly." Sophia swallowed her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Miss Fontaine. I truly appreciate that. I never intended to cause a scene or bring negative press to the restaurant. You spoke truth," Patrice interrupted gently. "I've already been in contact with our legal team in case Mr. Caldwell decides to pursue legal action, which we doubt he will. The public sentiment appears to be in your favor, and any lawsuit on his part would likely cause him more damage in the court of public opinion." Relief coursed through Sophia. She hadn't realized just how tense she was until that moment. Does that mean I still have a job?" Patrice's lip curved in a wry smile. "Yes, Sophia, you still have a job. In fact, we'd like to highlight your dedication and poise amid extreme circumstances. However, we must be cautious with the media. We don't want to provoke Mr. Caldwell or inflame the situation. If you receive any press inquiries, direct them to our public relations department." "Understood," Sophia nodded, tears threatening to spill. "Yes, thank you so much. I won't let you down." Patrice patted her hand, then addressed the staff. "For now, if any of you are approached by reporters, please refrain from giving statements. Direct them to PU. We will release a formal statement soon. Let's remember that we are a team, and we will treat each other and our patrons with the utmost respect." The staff applauded quietly, and Franco ended the meeting shortly after. While a wave of employees came to congratulate or hug Sophia, she stood in a haze of relief and lingering anxiety. She'd been granted a reprieve, but she knew the story was far from over. Ethan Caldwell might still retaliate, and the world's attention was on her. Still, for the first time in her life, Sophia felt seen not as an invisible waitress to be stepped on, but as a person with a voice and dignity that could not be bought at any price. In the days that followed, Sophia's life transformed in ways she never could have anticipated. The formal statement issued by Lipon was measured and firm. They stood behind their employee, denounced harassment, and assured the public that they would continue to offer world-class dining without compromising the dignity of their staff. This approach ignited a flurry of supportive messages on social media. Her face, captured mid-sentence in that grainy cell phone video, became a symbol of standing up against toxic entitlement. Hashtags multiplied, memes appeared, late-night show hosts joked about Ethan Caldwell's meltdown. A satirical article in The Onion teased Billionaire, outraged that Waitress expects basic courtesy spends $10 million on etiquette book to prove point. Amid the frenzied calls and emails flooded the restaurant, many from journalists requesting interviews. Following Patrice's advice, Sophia politely deflected them all, forwarding inquiries to the PR department. She tried to maintain her normal routine, taking Kiki to school, working her shifts, dancing with the small group of students she taught on weekends. But it was surreal to navigate the swirling media storm while attempting to appear calm for her daughter's sake. Then one late afternoon, as Sophia was finishing an early shift, the maître approached her with abused expression. "Sophia," he said, "there's someone here to see you." He says he's a friend of the owner and has a few words of support. Patrice approved it. She glanced around. "Who is it?" He jerked a thumb toward a discreet corner of the bar area where a tall man in a gray blazer stood with his hands clasped. He wore simple jeans and stylish sneakers, and though he tried to look incognito, the face was unmistakable. Sophia blinked, certain she was hallucinating. It was Bill Gates. She nearly dropped the tray she was carrying. The Bill Gates, the Microsoft co-founder, billionaire, philanthropist, and tech icon, just standing casually in Leapin's bar area, waiting to talk to her. Are you serious?" she breathed. The maître nodded wide-eyed. "Yes," he said. "Patrice is an old acquaintance of his, and he heard about what happened here." Her mind spun. Why would Bill Gates want to talk to her? She was just a waitress. Gathering her courage, she approached him. Up close, he looked surprisingly down to earth, wearing a kind smile behind unassuming glasses. "Mr. Gates," she managed, her voice tinged with awe. I'm Sophia Jenkins." He extended a hand. "Nice to meet you, Sophia," he said warmly. "I hope I didn't cause you any trouble by dropping in. I just wanted to offer some words of encouragement. Patrice told me about the incident with Ethan Caldwell." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "Sometimes people with wealth forget about humanity. You, on the other hand, reminded the world that decency is priceless." Sophia's cheeks flushed. "I don't know what to say. Thank you, but it was all so unexpected. I really wasn't trying to make a point or go viral." He laughed softly. "That's often how these moments happen. But you should know I respect your courage. I've dealt with all kinds of corporate bullies in my career. People forget that power and wealth aren't excuses for bad behavior. When Patrice told me your story, I decided I wanted to meet you if you were willing." She nodded, hardly believing this was real. I appreciate that more than I can express. But aren't you worried about being seen here? The press might." He lifted a hand, stopping her. "I'm not here to stoke any controversy. I'm just here to say that not everyone with money is like Ethan Caldwell, and you shouldn't let his actions define how you see people with resources. I also hope you won't let his threats intimidate you. There are many of us who admire your backbone. Honestly, I wish more people spoke up in situations like that." Before Sophia could respond, Patrice materialized, beaming. She greeted Bill Gates with a friendly kiss on each cheek, then turned to Sophia. "I see you two have met," she said, her voice filled with pride. "Sophia, Bill and I were chatting earlier about a potential philanthropic collaboration. We're looking into how we can help support workers' rights in the hospitality industry. We want to ensure that no one else has to face what you did." A whirlwind of emotions swirled in Sophia's chest. She, a small-town girl from upstate New York who had come to the city with big dreams of dancing and was now a single mom. Scraping by, was being told that Bill Gates and Patrice Fontaine wanted to help people like her. It was surreal. "That's incredible," she finally managed. "I never imagined something like this could come out of that awful night." Patrice nodded. "Neither did we, but sometimes adversity shines a spotlight on issues that need addressing. We're going to use this momentum to push for better protections and respect for service workers, and we'd love for you to be involved in some capacity." Sophia blinked, overwhelmed. "Involved?" She couldn't help but laugh nervously. I'm not really an activist. I told a rude billionaire he couldn't buy decency, that's all. Gates gave a small chuckle. That one sentence may have changed more than you realize. You see, real social shifts often start with everyday individuals who speak up in one critical moment, and then everyone else realizes they're not alone in how they feel that they, too, can speak out. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were tears of wonder and gratitude. "Well," she said shakily, "if there's anything I can do, share my story, give my perspective, I'd be happy to, especially if it helps others in my position." Patrice and Bill both smiled, exchanging glances. "We'll be in touch," Patrice said with the details. "But for now, let's celebrate the fact that you're still here employed and you've put a spotlight on an important issue." The rest of the conversation felt like a dream. Bill Gates asked about Kiki about Sophia's dance background and how she balanced her hectic schedule. He listened intently, displaying genuine curiosity and kindness, exactly the opposite of Ethan Caldwell's brusque entitlement. When he finally left, the entire staff buzzed with excitement. Patrice made sure the encounter remained discreet, letting Bill slip out a side door to avoid the press. Within an hour, Sophia was on her way home, her head spinning. She still had to pick up Kiki from Lydia's and figure out what to make for dinner. But she carried a newfound sense of purpose buoyed by unexpected allies. The confrontation with Ethan Caldwell had unleashed a wave of trials, but also a current of compassion and activism that she never imagined possible. Over the following weeks, the media frenzy gradually began to subside, replaced by thoughtful conversations about service industry standards. Sophia continued working at Le Papillon, though she noticed an uptick in curious customers who recognized her from the viral video. Some came purely out of curiosity, hoping to catch a glimpse of the famous waitress, but many arrived with genuine admiration, leaving generous tips and encouraging words. One evening, Patrice held a private gathering at Le Papillon, inviting industry leaders, philanthropic personalities, and a few select journalists. The purpose was to launch a new initiative, Project Decency, a foundation aimed at promoting worker protection, anti-harassment training, and empowerment for service employees. Patrice introduced Sophia as the unexpected catalyst for the movement. Standing at the microphone in the softly lit dining room wearing her black server's uniform, Sophia felt both terrified and exhilarated. She looked out at the crowd. Chefs, restaurators, activists, even a few celebrities. Bill Gates stood alongside Patrice, nodding in quiet support. Sophia took a deep breath. "Good evening," she began, voice trembling slightly. "I never thought I'd be standing here speaking to a room of such distinguished individuals. A month ago, I was just a waitress trying to provide for my daughter and do my job well, but one night everything changed. I spoke a single sentence to a powerful man, and it resonated far beyond my station. I've since learned that sometimes it only takes a moment of courage to highlight a systemic issue, one that affects millions of people in the service industry." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I don't stand here to vilify anyone, but I do want to remind everyone that respect is not optional. It's a basic human right. If we can create an environment where no server, cashier, janitor, or housekeeper ever feels powerless against harassment, then we've achieved something far greater than just a viral moment." Applause rose from the audience, gentle but heartfelt. A wave of warmth washed over Sophia, and she smiled, recalling the time she was too shy even to stand up to her dance instructors in college. Now she was speaking to a room filled with influential figures, urging them to promote decency. After the speeches concluded, the event transformed into a cocktail reception. Guests mingled sampling order crafted by Chef Lame. Mayor Sophia found herself inundated with handshakes and business cards. A high-profile Hollywood actress known for her activism told Sophia, "I wish I had your courage when I was working as a waitress in my early days." An older restaurant in a white suit nodded solemnly and said, "You reminded me why I got into hospitality in the first place, to serve and to respect people." Later, while sipping a tonic water by the bar, Bill Gates approached, giving her a reassuring smile. "Well done," he said. "You handled that speech like a pro." She laughed self-consciously. "My legs were shaking the entire time. Public speaking isn't exactly my thing." He raised an eyebrow good-naturedly. "You seemed at ease. Maybe you're a natural." He then glanced at Patrice, who was engaged in animated conversation with a group of journalists, and lowered his voice. "I wanted to let you know that we, Patrice and I, are considering you for a more formal role in Project Decency. Obviously, this would be your choice entirely. We wouldn't want to pressure you, but we think your authentic voice is incredibly valuable." Sophia's eyes widened a roll, as in working for the foundation. He nodded. "Part-time or full-time, whatever you can manage. We know you have responsibilities with your daughter, and we'd never ask you to quit your job at Lipon if you don't want to. But we'd like you to be an ambassador, a spokesperson of sorts, traveling with us to speak about worker empowerment. We can provide compensation, of course, and we can adapt the schedule around your availability." Her mind reeled. That sounds amazing, but also terrifying. "I've never done anything like that." He offered a kind smile. "Think about it. Talk it over with your loved ones. The offer stands, whenever you're ready." With that, he gave her a friendly nod and slipped away. Sophia exhaled, her thoughts spinning. She recalled the day she started at Le Pep. How anxious yet hopeful she felt. How far she'd come from that moment. Now she had opportunities she never dreamed of, born from a confrontation she never asked for, but one she bravely faced anyway. Across the room, Chef Laimer caught her eye and winked. The memory of that infamous night flickered, Ethan Caldwell shouting, belittling, acting as though he owned the restaurant and every soul in it. She remembered the single sentence she uttered that changed everything. "You can buy a steak, sir, but you can't buy decency." In that moment, she realized she'd stumbled into something far bigger than herself. By the time she got home that night, Kiki was already asleep in bed. Sophia tiptoed in, gently kissed her daughter's forehead, and headed to her cramped living room, where she sank onto the couch. She looked around at the cozy chaos dance shoes by the Dr. Kiki's crayons scattered on a table, a hamper of laundry waiting for her in the corner. It was a humble life, but it was hers. Her phone buzzed. She checked the screen to see a notification and email from Patrice, subject line Project Decency follow-up, heart pounding. She opened it. "Sophia, thank you for your wonderful speech tonight. Enclosed is more information about the formal role we'd like to offer you. Please let me know your thoughts. We believe you can make a real difference. Warm regards, Patrice Fontaine." A swirl of hope and apprehension surged through Sophia. She set the phone aside, knowing she needed time to think. Could she truly step into such a role, traveling and speaking publicly? Was it wise to leave or reduce her hours at Lipong, an income she still desperately relied on? Yet if this opportunity allowed her to better provide for Kiki and help millions of other service workers, wasn't it worth considering? She couldn't help but smile, remembering her own words. "You can buy a steak, sir, but you can't buy decency." That moment of spontaneous bravery had opened a door to a new horizon. She didn't know exactly where the path led, but she felt a surge of confidence pulsing through her. Perhaps, just perhaps, she was discovering a purpose she never imagined. Life, she realized, had a funny way of turning a single sentence into an entire movement. And so ends the story of how a single mom struggling to make ends meet found herself at the epicenter of a culture-shifting moment in one of Manhattan's most prestigious restaurants. Sophia's bold stand against a powerful billionaire began as an unexpected clash, but evolved into a clarion call for respect and dignity in the workplace. From viral social media clips to chance encounters with philanthropists like Bill Gates, her journey shows us that one voice, no matter how humble, can spark real change. Will Sophia stay at La Papon or join Project Decency full-time? That's a decision she's still weighing, but one thing's clear: she'll never be the same timid waitress who accepted insults quietly. Sometimes it takes just one sentence to reveal who you truly are and transform the world around you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more dramatic, inspiring tales, just like this one. Your support helps us keep creating content that uplifts and entertains. Let us know in the comments what you'd do if you were in Sophia's shoes. And remember, no matter how big or small you feel, your voice matters.